hi everyone. I'm Lou, Director of Pre-Eclampsia New Zealand Action on Pre-Eclampsia, which is NZAPEC. As Director of New Zealand APEC, it's one of my roles is to raise awareness of pre-eclampsia to women and families who are going through this. And tonight I'm talking to Rachel about her experience of pre-eclampsia, of severe early onset pre-eclampsia when she had her first baby. Rachel has also recently joined New Zealand APEC as a consumer support and joins our team to help support other women and families who are going through preeclampsia. So we hope that this interview provides support and information to others who are out there either experiencing a current diagnosis of preeclampsia or have experienced preeclampsia in the past and are still trying to figure out or make sense of what's happened to them. So preeclampsia often brings a lot of trauma, a lot of uncertainty, instability and insecurity to a woman's life and a family's life and the pregnancy as they face intense monitoring and which is heavily medical and can also have long stays in hospital, being away from home, being separated from family and loved ones. And the effects of preeclampsia can be traumatic, affecting physical, social and mental health of the woman and those around her. If anyone out there is watching us tonight and would like support from us, please know that you can get in contact with us. Just talk to someone like Rachel, and we're at support@nzapec.co.nz. But do go to our website, which is nzapec.co.nz for more information. So, good evening, Rachel.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Really appreciate your time and sharing your experience with us. So, first of all, can I kick off to ask you, tell us a bit about your experience of preeclampsia.
So basically, I'd never heard of preeclampsia before. And I had my 19-week scan with my baby and we found out we were having a girl. Everything seemed to be going pretty good. And so we thought, great, we're doing great. And then they just needed one more photo of her spine. And so they said, come back in 1 month. And it was in that 1 month, so between 19 weeks and sort of 24 weeks, that I had started to become unwell. And I'd kind of mentioned to a couple of people, oh, I'm not feeling that good. Like I've been a bit dizzy. I've had some nosebleeds. I've had a bit of swelling, and they were like, oh, it's just pregnancy stuff. It's fine. So, and with the midwife appointments being 1 month apart, I was going to see her after the scan. So I hadn't been checked in that month. And little did I know, in that month I had developed preeclampsia, not that I even knew what it was. So it wasn't until they scanned my baby that they realised that she was quite small and hadn't grown a lot in that last month. And also the Dopplers, so the blood flowing through the baby's cord, was quite sluggish and not as good as it should be. So that's when I got referred to fetal medicine. So still hadn't heard of preeclampsia, wasn't too sure what was wrong with my wee girl, and they just kept checking the baby for a couple of days, and yeah, it wasn't until somebody decided that they'd better check on me that they actually checked my blood pressure, and that was really high, and then they noted that the protein in my urine was really high. So it was then that I was diagnosed with severe preeclampsia, and by the time I got into the hospital that evening, my kidneys had already started failing. So yeah, it's crazy that within a month I developed this illness. I was perfectly fine before that, and then next minute it's nearly killing me. So yeah, I found that really scary. I'd never heard of it. When my midwife diagnosed me with it at my home in the evening, she told me not to Google it. Because she didn't want me to panic, and just said, so I thought then, oh, okay, this is obviously something pretty decent. And so she just said, just get into the hospital. And I had to kind of learn about it as I was going through it. And yeah, I'd never known anyone else to have it. There wasn't a lot of advice or anything around. So it was a really scary time for me and my husband. It was our first pregnancy, and yeah, we really didn't know what was going to happen and what was going on. So they kept us in hospital, well, me in hospital for a week, and I started to improve. All of my signs started to improve, and so they were kind of downgrading it to just preeclampsia and not severe preeclampsia, and I would be on bed rest and be monitored. And it wasn't until I started to get unwell one afternoon, so a week later, that they did the tests again, and I had started to develop HELP syndrome. So I was going into complete renal failure by then. My organs were failing, and my blood pressure had shot right up again. So they had to instantly take the baby out. So yeah, that was in between 24 and 25 weeks that I had to deliver my little girl. So she was obviously very premature and put into the NICU. And yeah, it was an insane experience for us, really insane. Yeah, really scary as well.
So we're going about, life, having your first baby, excited, and all these plans and dreams, to being abruptly put into a situation which was life-changing, going into hospital, intensive care basically in terms of your organs, surveillance on your body and your organs, and then getting unwell and having to deliver your baby early. So when you look back on that, what does preeclampsia mean to you? And I'm really interested to know, how did it impact your experience of motherhood for the first time?
Yeah, so obviously really huge impact for me. Like, I guess when you're young, or anyone really, when you're pregnant with your first child and you've got yourself in the position where you're ready for it, you're married, you own the house, and you feel like you're totally ready, it's a really exciting time, and you kind of imagine how it's all going to go, and you think, you're going to have your waters break, and you're going to announce to everyone that the baby's coming, and you'll have this big rush to get to the hospital, and you're going to be able to hold your little child as soon as you meet them, and you're going to be able to do all of these things. I wonder what you're going to put them in for their first outfit, and you can imagine sort of bringing them home. I don't know, I imagined all of that stuff, like what my first Christmas was going to be like, and yeah, you just kind of get prepared for it, and you get dreaming, and to have all of that just whipped out from under you in the space of a week is just crazy. In the space of a simple diagnosis, really. So we didn't get to, in the end, to take our little girl home. She passed away at 3 months old. But even like I didn't get to touch her, hold her, feed her first feed, change her first nappy, all of these things that you lose, like you get taken away from you. It's kind of like a bit of a grieving process. You kind of have to grieve all the things that you imagined would happen in your birthing plan, and even with your baby when it first arrives, can all be taken away. Yeah, and so it can be really tricky to navigate. Yeah, really tricky.
And I'm really sorry for your loss of your wee girl.
Yeah, thank you.
How does the experience of this traumatic diagnosis and delivery, and with your first baby, when you went on to have your future children, how did this experience of preeclampsia have an impact on your experience of your next babies?
It was really scary being pregnant again. And I was very lucky that I was given the same midwife. So, I chose the same midwife. I really wanted to choose her because she knew everything that I'd been through, knew that if I felt like something wasn't right, that I wouldn't just be being dramatic. So it was really cool to have the same one, but it was also, I did still have a lot of anxiety around getting sick again. So I was more paranoid about every symptom I had. I felt like I didn't want to get excited about anything. I felt like I didn't want to make any birthing plans. There was just, I don't know, there was not a lot of joy that you would normally have when you're pregnant. It was a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, and just sort of taking it a week at a time and getting as far through as I could. Yeah, it was different. It was scary, but in saying that, I wouldn't take any of it back. We've gone on to have 2 other pregnancies, and we were very closely monitored by all the medical teams. So it was really nice to for them to kind of all be rallying behind us as well, and for them to really care. Yeah, I found the team in the Christchurch Women's Hospital. They have a birthing team there that are really cool, like they're really good people, and I found that they really cared. They got to know us. We were in there so often getting tests done, and so yeah, it was scary, but it was worth it, and yeah, we got through it, and we've had 2 girls, so yeah, that's good. Yeah.
How did preeclampsia affect your husband and your wider family?
Yeah. So I do have my own YouTube video out with a bit of a story on what happened with my husband, but yeah, he was sort of whipped out from work. So he kind of, we thought I was getting better, and I'd gone up on the bed rest ward and everything was fine. And then when I developed the HELLP syndrome, things changed really quickly, and they didn't really want to tell me what was going on because they didn't want my blood pressure to be raised any higher. So I didn't really know what was going on. And then also had my husband, that I was going to ring him, but then the team ended up calling him and said, you need to come in straight away. So because I was kind of casual about it because I didn't know what was really going on. So then the nurse said that they would ring him. So he was told to come in from work straight away, and he worked not very far from there, and he was biking, so he could quickly pop into the hospital and not worry about parking. So he just biked up and came in, and when he came in, they kind of gave him scrubs straight away and said, she's going into theatre, and he was like, oh, okay. And so he had quickly rung family, and he'd rung my father, who was working in town because they live an hour out of town, and he was on the motorway on his way out of town. And I'd already said, oh, don't get them all coming in, because I didn't know what was going to happen with the baby, and I didn't want everyone staring at me. So I was kind of like, let's not do that. So he'd kind of said, oh, everything will be fine. And yeah, he got whisked into the theatre, but the epidural took quite a while to get in. So he was waiting outside for a long time. And they'd said to him, and good on them, they were kind of being realistic, but they said to him, look, you know, your wife and baby may die this evening, like in theatre, she's really unwell. And so they kind of had this conversation with him. And then he was like, oh, okay, like he didn't think I was that unwell when he saw me last. And then when he came into the theatre, he did kind of notice that I was looking quite unwell. And there was also like a line, and I might mention this later, but there's also, he could tell that the staff were panicking, and that kind of set him off as well. And they'd always said to us, you know, we're not panicking, so you don't need to panic. They kind of constantly said that to us. And so when he saw that they were all panicking, he was like, well, this is my time to panic. And yeah, he kind of went to hold my hand, and then he'd fallen on the floor. And so to him, I think it just really affected him. Like it was just too much for him to take in. He was just like, holy crap. But having spoken to him recently, he was also a little bit scared because he'd told my dad that everything would be fine, and then he'd since found out that it might not be, and he couldn't bring my dad back because he didn't have his phone. So I think he was a bit freaked out about getting in trouble with my dad as well. But yeah, so really, really scary time for him. And then with future pregnancies, really scary as well. Like he was like, even when my first child had arrived and we were sort of discussing whether or not we would try again for another one, he was like, the risk is then that if I become unwell and I do pass away, that we then leave a child motherless as well. So there was a lot going on in our heads to, and for his mind as well, to process having a second, or essentially our third. Yeah. So really tough for him, and I guess tough for our families as well, because they were all dragged on board this roller coaster, and they hadn't heard of it either, and they didn't really know what was going on. And yeah, and I think it was hard for my husband and my family. They were kind of torn between visiting me, who was in sort of an intensive care unit, or visiting the baby, who was in an intensive care unit, and going between the two. yeah, my husband found that particularly rough. He would come in first thing in the morning as soon as they would let him in the doors, and he was always not sure where to go first. And then as soon as he saw one, he'd quickly want to go see the other. And yeah, it's been a really tough journey for not just me, for everyone else around me as well. Yeah.
Yes, I can imagine that getting that phone call and actually being confronted by something that it's just weren't expecting.
Yeah, just shock, I think.
So your preeclampsia was quite early on, and also your awareness around preeclampsia, you allude to was pretty well, was non-existent. So what advice do you give to pregnant women out there and their care providers about preeclampsia? What message would you like to give to women and to care providers about being aware?
For the awareness side of it, like I think for me, because I was seeing a midwife from 12 weeks, and every single time I saw her, she checked my blood pressure, she checked my urine, but she never told me what she was checking for. So I just was like, maybe bladder infections are a thing. I don't know. Like, I didn't know what she was checking for. Like, and I know it's good to monitor your blood pressure when you're getting a health check. So yeah, I guess for providers, I think it would be communication, like really telling people what you're looking for, telling people the signs, and they said they like to do that sort of further down the track. But I mean, I could be in a way different position if I had known a lot earlier how serious my symptoms were that I had. So also to mothers who do experience symptoms and are not sure, and you're just getting from people, oh, it's just pregnancy, like it pays to double check. Like check with your midwife and just tell her you're not feeling right, something's not right. I had so many symptoms, so many, and I just brushed them off. I didn't really think much of it. Had no idea what preeclampsia was. So I guess it's trusting your gut if something doesn't feel right. Speak to a medical professional instead of just advice from colleagues and friends. And and I guess if you're in the field and you're dealing with pregnant women, just if you're checking for something, tell them what you're checking for and what to look out for, because I was really blown away that I had this illness for just about a month and had never heard of it and had no idea. So that's my advice around that.
Thank you. And so the final question is around support to other women out there and families. And what would you say to those currently experiencing a diagnosis, or maybe in hospital, maybe have just had a baby, are still in hospital, or have experienced preeclampsia in the past and are still trying to piece together what happened to them? What advice do you have to help them get through? How did you get through? How did you and your family get through that?
So for me, during the diagnosis, so when I was diagnosed and still had it, I really liked the advice that I had received from the medical team, which was, we're just going to take it one day at a time. And that kind of would get me through to the next day. It was sort of like, okay, we've got through another day, we've got through another day. So every day babies on the inside is so much better for when they're on the outside. So that advice really stuck with me. I quite enjoyed taking it a day at a time. It seemed to be, you just stopped thinking about the bigger picture that you originally had, which was the birth and the Christmas and all the things. Like, just take it a day at a time, and before you know it, another week's passed. So that would be the advice for someone who's got it at the moment. Somebody who's just had a baby with that would be go easy on yourself and really let yourself grieve everything that you've lost, feel all the things you need to feel without sort of feeling guilty or ashamed or being labelled as someone who's going through some sort of depression or anything like that. Just feel what you need to feel, and just, if you're feeling upset about someone, you could say, I'm feeling upset because of everything I've lost. Like, if someone doesn't understand, just sit and sort of explain to them why you're feeling that way, because I had to do that a couple of times just with yeah, once I processed everything that I had lost, I sort of had to say, well, here's everything that I'm feeling upset about. Here's what I'm feeling sad. Like, it just giving people a bit of an idea of, because some people don't quite understand. They're like, oh, your pregnancy's over, lucky you. Sort of, they just don't understand. So yeah, I guess it's just dealing with those people just without frightening them, just helping them understand everything that you've lost, and letting yourself work through all of those feelings and emotions. And I guess, yeah, if you're way out the other side like I am, so for me, this was 14 years ago, so I'm kind of way out the other side now in terms of emotionally dealt with it. Not that there's still not things that come up every now and then, but for those people who could be still struggling even years down the track, one thing that I had struggled with over the years is I had to forgive myself. So I felt like I had this guilt that, why didn't I know? What could I have done? Could I have eaten differently? Could I have got a bit more sleep? Could I have had a less stressful job? Or like, is there something I could have done? And realizing that it's actually not my fault, and there's probably nothing I could have done to prevent me from getting it. So I guess it's learning to forgive yourself, and just putting it to rest, but pretty much, like, the blame game, I suppose you would call it. Just yeah, and that's a hard one. It's a hard one to swallow everything, that all the what ifs, I've done this and what if I've done that, and yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, it's just letting go of all of that, I think, is really helpful to move on, to process it, and also allowing yourself to still just feel those feelings, even if it's years later and you want to feel sad and you want to cry about it. Like, do it, instead of bottling it up. Find some people to talk to, and definitely having the you guys, the New Zealand Action on Pre-Eclampsia, I think is really cool. So finding someone to reach out and talk to there who you can connect with. So I feel like just finding people to talk about it is really healthy. Yeah.
Thank you. Sure, that would help someone out there who's currently struggling. So I've watched your story a number of times now, and also have put your story onto other people who it's helped greatly. So we hope to put that on our YouTube. What really stood out for me was one, after your baby had passed away, it was quite isolating, and you mentioned in your story about people crossing the road or trying to avoid you because they didn't know what to say, or they felt like they didn't want to upset you. That's quite, from women that I talked to through NZAPEC, that's quite a common experience. I'm wondering if there's any advice for those out there who sometimes may be frightened to talk to someone who's lost a baby if they haven't experienced that themselves, and how we can feel a bit more comfortable about friends you mentioned in your colleagues. I think you mentioned in your video that kind of avoided you a little bit. Was that the experience because of the grief, or because of being scared to say the wrong thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, when somebody loses a child, like, I guess it's, most people call it the unimaginable pain, and so and a lot of people say, oh, I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to get through it, and it's kind of like, well, yeah, it's not a box that I ticked to choose to do and to see if I could do the challenge. Like, you're just put in that situation in 0.5 seconds. Next minute you're a grieving parent. And I guess yeah, if you know anyone out there who is like that, who's grieving, I just know that you're not going to be able to make it better. And I think that's what they know. I think they know they can't do anything to help them, so they just run away. But that doesn't necessarily help. I guess just being there, and just listening, really, just seeing if they need anything, ask if they're okay, and yeah, just constantly listening to what they say, without running a mile, basically. Yeah, I still get it to this day. Still get it to this day where people will make a comment or about how many children I've had, and if it's somebody I'm never going to see again, like I wouldn't tell them that I've had 3. But if it's someone that I'm going to be with every day, like a work colleague or whatever, then I might mention that to them. But it depends. Sometimes they just run a mile and then they're too scared to speak to me again. So sometimes it's not worth it. Yeah, so it's tricky. It's just scary for people because it's everybody's worst nightmare to lose a child. So to have somebody standing right in front of you who's probably looks like they're living your worst nightmare, you just freeze and they just run. But I guess it's just for that person to realize that I didn't choose this. This is not a path that I would ever choose to be on, and to just love me and support me. And I'm really sorry to hear that. That must have been horrible. Is fine, rather than there's no way I could deal with it. Like, because, well, you don't have a choice. Yeah, I either sit in the corner and just stop breathing, or I carry on. And yeah, it's not been easy, and it's definitely hard without the support of some of the people who you thought were really cool mates or cool work colleagues, or yeah, it's really tricky to get up and carry on. You see people dodging you in the shopping mall, and yeah, it's tricky. It's hard, but I don't know. I guess it's I don't know, for me, like, I didn't think, oh, I've obviously got rabies or whatever. Like, it's them. They're scared. They don't know what to say to me, so they'd rather just hide. I think it's a natural human thing to do. Like, if you're about to be thrown into an awkward situation that you can get out of, you'll just run. So yeah, it's not nice, but I guess if they just put themselves in my shoes for a little bit, and experience what I've been through, like, yeah, all you need to do is just be there. Just don't run, don't hide. Just a simple "how are you?" It's fine, even if I say I'm not feeling good today, like I'm having a shit day, like, just say I'm really sorry to hear that. Yeah, just don't run, because it's isolating enough without people running. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I hope, yeah, just your story is just so rich, and we really appreciate you sharing. And we hope it helps other people out there, which is one of the things you'd like to do.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I shared it. Yeah, just for anyone else who's going through anything like that, like, it's really tough. And I also found, depending what country you lived in, as to what experience you've had with the health system. So there's a few times in the video where I do mention I'm from New Zealand and this is what happens in New Zealand, because it is different to what happens overseas. But yeah, I just thought it would be helpful, and I'm really glad that people have found it really useful and intriguing, because I kind of, when I saw how long it was, I thought, oh, it's a bit long, it might be a bit boring, but it seems to be everyone's kind of gets in and follows the story and is once they're halfway through. Yeah.
Really worth a watch. So we'll wrap it up there, and I'd like to thank you very much for your time. And if, as I say, if anyone out there would like to get in touch with us, please email us at support@nzapec.co.nz. Okay, bye for now.